Dodge this.
One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole? Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of DTRH. It is September 3rd, 2015. Thursday edition of DTRH. Tonight is going to be a very serious discussion, continuing actually where I left off on Tuesday. I'm going to get a little bit more into detail about what I was discussing. In case you didn't catch the live show on Tuesday, Joe and I got into detail. Not for the whole show. We discussed a few different topics, but one of the things that we discussed a little bit in detail was Fukushima and something called the Wigner Effect. And I know that it provoked a ton of interest in what I was talking about and the topics. So much so that I decided to dedicate tonight's whole show to it. Now, in the future, I'm going to have who I consider to be one of the utmost experts on this, the Wigner Effect and Fukushima, back on. Christina Consolo, a.k.a. RadChick, you all know her. I'm also going to discuss this topic with Loren Murray, who you've heard me interview once already. So the two of them, those two have been on top of this, the Wigner thing. And if it weren't for their work, and I'm saying this right now because they're the ones that have brought this to the forefront to a lot of people's attention, especially Christina. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart to the both of you, Loren and Christina, because of the two of you guys pointed this out to me, and I didn't even know this was an issue. If you don't know, you don't know, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And you start to pay attention to this, and, Christina gave me what I consider the Wigner sunglasses. It's the radiation damage issue sunglasses version of the Hoffman sunglasses from They Live. Instead of putting the Hoffman sunglasses on and you see consume and all the signs and stuff, you put these glasses on and you start to notice that things are breaking down at this exponential rate too. It's just this climbing exponential rate. So thank you to Christina and thank you to Loren for the work that you guys have done over the years to expose the nuke industry for what it really is, nuke technology, Fukushima, the health hazards of radiation, the Wigner Effect. You two are awesome ladies. Love you both. Mwah. So, all right. With that being said, let's get into the topics I want to discuss tonight. 3 main things. I'm going to go over Fukushima because there's a bunch of stuff going on over there right now. So we'll get into that. I want to discuss Wigner a little bit more in depth so people kind of understand a little bit more about it. It's not really actually hard to comprehend once you understand what's going on, but I want to get into it a little bit more. And I want to discuss the storage problems that we have with nuke waste. And it's going to segue me into talking about why I'm against the Iran nuke deal. And I brought this up yesterday. It's not even that I'm against the Iran nuke deal. I'm against any nuke deal. There's so much that people don't understand about, quote unquote, nuke energy. We'll get into that. So, where do I want to start? Let's start with storage issues. How about that? Because that'll segue into the other issues and other problems that are ongoing right now. So, radioactive waste storage issues. Popeye, what do you mean there's storage issues? They put them in containers and they bury them in the earth and they put them in caves. Storage problem solved, right? No. Those containers that they put them in, the leak-proof containers, only last 3 to 5 years due to the Wigner Effect. It's called the Wigner Effect because of the doctor, by the way, that discovered what was going on and figured this out. Or scientist, doctor, whatever he was. I think he was a scientist, if I remember correctly. Anyway, he's the one that figured it out. So that's why it's called the Wigner Effect, but it really is just the effect that radiation has on materials, right? So said materials are what made the sarcophagus over Chernobyl, like concrete, cement, metal containers, barrels, right? All of those things. The same things, by the way, that our infrastructure is built off of, which we'll get into. These containers, you see how it segues? You see how the containment problem segues into Wigner? You see how that's very simple? It goes back and forth, right? Okay, so the containers are made out of the same material that you're having issues with infrastructure and airplanes and stuff falling out of the sky, which we'll get into. The containment vessels are made out of the same material, ladies and gentlemen. So how do you contain this stuff? If it breaks down the containment vessel that it's sitting in, how do you safely contain it? You don't. That's the problem we actually face. Now, it's scary. Nobody really wants to deal with it, so they stick their head in the sand, and they trust what the government tells them because it's more comfortable, because that's some scary stuff right there. We have to realize that this is very real and this is going on, and we need to deal with it. It's not something that can't be dealt with. And although there isn't current technology on the planet to properly deal with the ongoing meltdowns over at Fukushima, there could be if we put our minds to it and started focusing on that instead of building rockets and bombs that chase people around corners. You know, if we stopped inventing new and improved ways to kill each other and we started to focus that energy on solving problems like Fukushima, things would be drastically different on this little blue marble. Drastically different. Anyway, I digress. So, containment issues. They haven't figured out a container to store this crap in. And we're going to make more by building more of these centrifuges and more nuke energy facilities. Let's get something straight. Nuclear energy is nothing more than a cover for them making weapons. Because that's what's actually going on there. The energy creating process is actually, it's secondary. And it's done more so to cover what they're doing. And we all know that that's exactly how they, the powers that shouldn't be, do things. They dress it up, they make it look flashy and nice and pretty. Oh, it's energy. It's energy. But in reality, all those nuke power plants are creating material for weapons. So they're weapons manufacturing facilities is what they really are. Think about that. Let that sink in. No, Popeye, you don't know what you're talking about. They're specifically built to generate electricity. Really? The way that they generate electricity is the most retarded way to generate electricity. Even Einstein said it's a really dumb way to boil water. It's not smart what we do. If you actually think about what we do and the energy output that comes out, it doesn't make really sense what they're doing. I know to the average American person who doesn't have the attention span anymore of more than a few minutes because of Twitter and YouTube and all this garbage in the mainstream media, they're not going to pay attention to that. You have to sit down and talk to them and point this out. That's what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. These nuke power plants are weapons manufacturing facilities. That's what you see going on right in front of you. But hey, it's okay. The government would tell you if they were actually doing that, wouldn't they? ... Yeah, sure. So there's that. Now, all the waste that's created, these fuel rods, and by the way, we have the same reactors that you see going on over at Fukushima right here in the United States. Yeah, that's a sobering thought. Thank you, GE. We bring good things to life. No, you don't. You most certainly do not, GE. We bring horrible radioactive monsters to life. That's what you do, GE. Thank you. Military-industrial complex. Anyway, the containment vessels that they have in all of these storage facilities, whether it be for and waste. Let me be a little bit clear about what waste is. This is why I wanted 2 hours tonight to get into this. I myself, until I had sat down and I asked Christina this one night. I said, Christina, could you please explain to me the definition of nuke waste? Because I always assumed, like you see in the movies or in cartoons, nuke waste would be some like sort of sludge, some sort of like goo, that they would have to put in a barrel and you couldn't touch it and it would melt you or whatever. I don't think the general public has any idea what nuke waste actually is. Yes, you have the fuel rods, the spent fuel rods and all that, and you have all that, and you might have sludge and stuff like that, radioactive sludge. But that's not what solely makes up nuke waste. Anybody that was wearing suits, any Tyvek suits, boots, anything that was irradiated, helmets, gloves, tools, toolboxes. If, in the case of Fukushima, they're walking around with Geiger counters strapped to like 10, 15-foot poles so that they don't walk into pockets of radiation and instantly die, which could happen depending on the levels of radiation. So all of that stuff that they're wearing in the contaminated zone, that's all radioactive waste. That has to go into barrels and get, put somewhere. You can't use it again. There's no cleaning it. It's all radioactive. Does not matter. Every bit of it. Boots, shoes, tools, equipment, all the robots they send into Fukushima that make it like 100 feet and then die and they don't do anything. Yeah, radioactive waste. That is a very sobering thought because now you realize the level of radioactive waste. Now, because this stuff is giving off radioactivity, even if it's just tools, and they put them in a barrel and they seal it, within a few years, the radioactivity that is coming off of those tools that have been contaminated will break down the vessel they're sitting in, and they will continue to decay the radioactive particles, and they will continue to give off radioactivity for however long the half-life is of whatever the hell is that has contaminated the tools. And it'll keep going. And it'll break down that containment barrier, and then it'll just keep going and going like the Energizer Bunny and putting that out into the surrounding atmosphere and contaminating anything around it. That's the reality of nuke energy and nuke waste. That's the reality of it. Okay? In a nutshell. A very plain, easy, simple to understand nutshell. And it's way more in-depth. But to present it to you on a very simple level, there you go. And all of that waste, we don't have a way to deal with. The casket that they built over top, the concrete casket that they built over top of Chernobyl is cracking. Because it's been, 20, 25 years since Chernobyl happened? Wigner's having an effect on the concrete. It happens. The radiation breaks the material down on a molecular level. Okay, it causes it to fail. You're having, and I'll get into the Wigner effect with planes and infrastructure and all that in a bit, but think about that for a minute. The containment vessels, okay, that are holding all of this waste, they can't hold it for lengthy periods of time. All the water in the Fukushima tank farm, all that radioactive water that they pump into the tanks, okay, that they don't want to pump into the Pacific Ocean, right? Well, and even though they are pumping radioactive water into the Pacific, and then you have the radioactive groundwater, which we'll get into, but all the water in those tank farms, those vessels, that water is radioactive. Therefore, the radioactive particles in the water. See, radioactivity, if you understand it on a very basic level, it's pretty simple to understand why it's so dangerous, right? Because the radioactive particles are decaying, and as they decay, they're giving off radioactivity. Well, if you have radioactive particles inside of the water is radioactive. So now you have radioactive water inside of a container that is just giving off massive amounts of radiation. The massive amounts of radiation are affecting, on a molecular level, the containment vessel that it's sitting in. What happens when the containment vessel fails and the water flows out? You now have that stuff irradiating the atmosphere, the ground, and wherever that goes. And if it's water and it gets into the ground, well, we all know how water and the ground work, ladies and gentlemen. So then now you're contaminating the ground further. And if there's any groundwater that happens to be traveling along the area underneath where you are, like in the case of Fukushima, because there's an underground river, they diverted a river to build the plant, and the water still flows down from the mountains, and because of the way the land is, it flows right underneath. Well, now you have all this radioactive water leaking, not to mention the cores that have already melted down, but we'll get into that later. Do you see my point? You see how bad this is? And yet everybody wants to worry, oh my God, the Iranians, they're going to get a nuke and they're going to bomb us. Oh, we have to be worried, those crazy Muslims. That's all a red herring. That's to get you to focus on, because, someone's going to eventually be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have nukes at all. And they know that. They know that there's that whole mass of people out there that would come up and say that. So they get the anger to be focused on a BS argument. Logical fallacies 101, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, I've gone over this 1,000 times. They get you to focus on, oh my God, the Iranians, they're going to kill us. Whoa, those crazy Persians. We know what happened. They wanted to take the Greeks out. Remember Sparta? Whoa. I mean, that's what they get you to focus on. How about focusing on the real problem? The crap that they're going to produce from the enrichment process and everything else, okay? The garbage that they're going to produce from that, where are they going to put it? And by the way, America, we've already been irradiated, so everybody needs to calm their moans down. Oh my God, they're going to bomb us and we're going to have a radioactive material all over the country. We already do. Besides the fact that there's 85%, talk about a staggering number, up in the tropopause, 85% of the radioactive material that was put into the sky and into the atmosphere from the bomb tests in the 50s and the 60s, yeah, that's still up there. Thanks. That's just lovely. So that's 85% of it's still floating around the tropopause. That's not including what happened at Fukushima, or what happened over in Russia at Chernobyl, or 3 Mile Island, or anything else that's ejected radioactivity into the air. You catch my drift? You understanding why this is really, really a bad situation? There's nothing to panic about, okay? We just need to do something about this. I want to leave my 5-year-old niece a better planet, okay? Now, Fukushima has already screwed a lot of things up, and so is all the bomb testing in Chernobyl and everything else, but I want to leave that kid a better world, somewhat of a better world, and the future generations, her grandkids, I want to leave them a better world, and those kids' grandkids. We need to think about the future. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, the sobering thought of all this is, wow, this could make us all sick and it could shorten our lives, this generation, and it's very true. It's a very big possibility, but it's not how we die; it's how we live. So if we just accept that fact that we're all going to die one day and none of us make it out of this game alive called life, then let's live it to the fullest. Let's do the right thing. And the first thing to do would be to stop contaminating the planet with this new crap. Think about this. This is some serious, you need to sit down after this show tonight. You need to sit down and you need to think. Okay? You need to shift perspective a little bit. A lot of the stuff they have people focusing on is all BS arguments because, as I said before, I really don't think they want people focusing on Fukushima, because if everybody focused on Fukushima and the threat that radioactivity and the Wigner Effect and all this stuff that comes from all of this radiation coming out from 3 meltdowns plus all the other crap that's been injected into the sky, I really think that if people realized what was going on, it would be the great unifier. It would be the one thing that actually could bring humanity together, and not on this bullshit level of one world government where we have a contrived event and everybody, like an alien invasion, and everybody does what we say. No. I mean, like, everybody looking past governments and corporations because they realize that they're the ones that caused this problem to begin with, right? And everybody looking past that and figuring stuff out on their own. Scientists don't need the government to figure things out. In fact, the government usually screws things up and gets in the way. We just need each other. We need free thinkers. We need to stop depending on douchebags that wear suits to come and tell us, oh, everything's okay. What we did was, the radiation coming from Fukushima, we know it's not bad because we raised the acceptable limits. So we know it's not bad for you, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, think about that. Any bit of radiation is bad for you. I know Christina's going to end up using the one audio bite that I used, but there's during the interview with Loren, there was a segment where I was talking to her and we were talking about levels of radiation. And I said to her, you know, it really kills me when people say, oh, it's only a little bit of radiation. It's not that bad, like when you go to the dentist. And they say, it's only a little bit of radiation. Radiation is cumulative, ladies and gentlemen. Any level of radiation is bad for you. And I know that Earth gives off some of its own natural background radiation, you know, rocks in the ground. Okay, I'm talking about the stuff that we've done since we started playing with nuke weapons. Humanity. And when I say us, I don't mean just the United States. I mean everybody that was playing with nuke weapons. And then these corporations that happen to be based in the United States because they're scumbags, they happen, the nuke industry, they pushed all these countries. They pushed all these reactors into these countries' laps practically. You know, Japan got force-fed that crap after World War II. We need to figure out a better way to boil water, okay? And we need to realize that this is not just to make electricity. Really? It's one of the most ineffective ways to make electricity. Hamsters running in a hamster wheel would be more effective and less dangerous, I may add, because the last time I checked, when a hamster wheel broke down, it didn't irradiate an entire area or set off an explosion. Thank you. You can quote me on that. Unbelievable. And then they build them on fault lines. Really? That's a... You can't tell me they're not trying to, like, take out a certain segment of society, like a certain number of people. You can't tell me they're trying to not depopulate the planet. I mean, what kind of scientist, what kind of engineer says, it'd be a smart idea to take this nuke power plant that could really devastate life around it, and we're going to put it right here next to this fault line, because that's not going to cause a problem ever. I understand some of them they built on fault lines, over fault lines before they knew they were there because they didn't have the ground penetrating radar or satellites that we have now, but which is another sobering effect because that means that plant is that old. Yeah, think about that one for a moment. Wonder how the maintenance is on that one. And just remember, Wigner also affects, and I'm going to get into that in the second segment, Wigner affects, ladies and gentlemen, the entire plant itself, because there's levels of radiation, even if they're low. And if there's a leak or something happens, which it happens at every one of these plants, that radiation, even over the course of time, is affecting anything that is around it. Pipes are going to break, valves are going to break, things are going to get let loose, leaks are going to happen. Yeah, radiation's really, really, really a fickle bitch. Shouldn't be something we're playing with. And I'm being straightforward with you all, honestly, because I assume that we're all grown up to have this conversation about this. You know, I figure I can get it across to you in a very calm manner. There's no point running around you screaming with your head cut off. We have to talk about this stuff. So, first segment's almost done. There's the contamination issues of leaking containment vessels covered. And that's just the containment vessels. And again, sobering thought. We still have all the radioactive waste that goes back to when we first started testing this stuff. They don't know what to do with it because everything's leaking. Joe and I talked about the other day, and I've talked about this with Christina. Well, couldn't we put it on a rocket and send it into the sun? But SpaceX and NASA and all these other people can't seem to get a rocket off the ground without blowing shit up. I don't think we really want to be sending a rocket into the atmosphere and having, tons. You only need, but I think it's 5 pounds of plutonium you need in the atmosphere to explode, and it would kill everybody. It would be enough to wipe out life on the planet. I think it's like 5 pounds, something like that. Really small amount, 5 or 10 pounds, something to that effect. So can you imagine if you have a rocket with a payload of 200 tons of waste and it goes up and boof? Yeah. See, that's a problem. I mean, realistically, the only way to get rid of it would be to send all the radioactive waste into the radioactive ball of fire in the sky. Wouldn't affect the sun because the sun is just, one big chain reaction pretty much going on, right? But how do you get it there or how do you at least get it out of Earth's atmosphere without it blowing up and irradiating the whole planet? So we really don't have any foolproof way to contain this stuff or get rid of it. But we want to make more of it. Think about that for a second. Don't get bogged down in the politics of this, ladies and gentlemen. Iran or any of these terrorist groups could light off a nuke tomorrow and it wouldn't do any more damage radioactive wise than they've already done with DU in this country, using DU at live fire ranges. The radioactive fallout from all the bomb testing. Fukushima leaking and then not telling you. All the leaks here in the United States that have happened. Chernobyl. So put that fear away. You can look through the garbage. You can push that aside. Open the curtains and you can see the truth. All right, we'll be back. 3 short minutes. Stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to get into Wigner and the Wigner Effect. I discussed this the other night. I talked about it a little bit in the first segment there. It's the effect that radiation has on materials like steel, concrete, things like that. Building materials that things are made of, i.e., as I said, the containment vessels and our infrastructure. So, when I first heard about this, and I don't believe what people tell me, especially when it's people that I go to like Christina and I pick their brain and I ask them questions and things like that. Not that I don't believe them, but I'm always, as I always tell you, always do your own research, and I try to remain somewhat skeptical until I can verify what I've, been presented. So Christina had told me about Wigner, and she said, how it affects the metal. And it's amazing that even when you're awake, your brain, certain information is just so disturbing to you, your brain is like, no, that can't be true. So I said to her, well, that sounds crazy, but I don't know if I fully buy it, and she said, look, it's real simple. When you'll start to notice it more now, and you'll start to see things are breaking down, metal, there's a lot of metal objects, things breaking, scaffolding, things like that, jets, planes having issues, parts falling off, metal fatigue, things happening that shouldn't be happening. So she tells me this, and I'm like, okay. So it's kind of like when something is pointed out to you and you start to notice it more. Well, that's what happened. And I started to walk around and just noticing things like in the newspaper. Randomly, I'd be in the store and I'd look down and there's an article about, a plane crash or something fell off a plane. You go online and you look in the news every morning and the news feed, and there's a plane losing a wheel. Literally landing gear falling off of a plane, or stunt planes doing their stunt plane thing and the tail rips off due to metal fatigue. Now you could say, oh, well, Popeye, they're stunt planes. There's a lot of fatigue on the airframe. Yeah, there is a lot of fatigue on the airframe, but they're inspected. So that means that the fatigue that caused the crash probably was missed by the naked eye. Now the question is, how could they miss it if they inspect those planes the way they do? Unless it was on a very microscopic level inside the metal and you didn't see the crack and it just let go because on a molecular level it was breaking down, and eventually it got to the point where, especially if you're doing a stunt like that, you probably wouldn't even need a full crack or even a little fracture in the metal. You would probably just need it to be weak enough at the molecular level to break, which is what Wigner does. Now, that's a sobering thought, because not only does that pose a problem with the containment vessels, as I said in the first segment, it also poses a large problem with everything else. Everything. And like Christina said to me, people can't ignore planes falling out of the sky. They can ignore the scaffolding falling down, things like that. They can ignore amusement park rides breaking, going off the rails. And this stuff affects everything. Electronics. You start to see a lot of electronic problems with things. You start to notice things. You're like, And some stuff you can look into and be like, okay, yeah, this happened, so I don't think that's related. But a lot of it, you're like, wow. Even engineers are baffled about a lot of the things that are going on, especially with airplanes falling apart. I'm sure everybody's noticed how many planes have been losing parts or crashing as of late, right? Everybody really needs to think about this logically. I'm not saying every accident, everything that happens is the Wigner effect, but if all of our infrastructure, our people, our cars, our buildings, everything is being dosed by radiation, not only from, again, Chernobyl and the 85% of the crap that's floating around in the tropopause. No, not just that. Not just the DU rounds and all that crap. No. What about Fukushima? 3 ongoing meltdowns. And that's just ejecting this crap out into the atmosphere. Spewing it. Spitting it out. That's affecting everything. It's affecting buildings, bridges, railroads, everything. And it might take longer for the infrastructure to break down. And people might not notice it either, because they'll say, oh, that's just, their infrastructure, it's rust. Yeah, but the decay of the metal and the failure of it will come much faster. It'll accelerate the decay. So instead of the metal lasting 50 years, it might only last 25 years. And you'll notice that this metal is, the engineers would be the ones that would notice it when they went and did bridge inspections and stuff. Things like that. Now, when it comes to the planes, it's even worse, because there is a huge radiation plume coming from Fukushima that goes all the way up into the upper levels of the atmosphere. And it's high enough that when these planes, especially coming back and forth from Asia, and these big intercontinental flights, they're flying right through it. Over and over and over and over and over again. So not only do planes and the flight crew get exposed to high levels of radiation to begin with, flying around, doing their job on a normal basis, and that radiation, just because they're up that high and everything else, and that radiation is already it's having that Wigner effect, but at a much lower, slower pace. But now these planes are flying through high levels of radiation, massively high levels of radiation, this huge radioactive plume coming out of Fukushima. And it's not like it's shut off. It's been going on for 4 years. So picture if you left your faucet on for 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. The first 15 or 20 minutes, the leak may not be that bad and you could clean it up. What do you think it would look like if you left your faucet on for 4 years? Fukushima's got 3 faucets. And they're all spewing radioactivity. Okay? Think of it that way. They turned them on high and broke the knobs off. Scary thought. And there's other problems going on over there, which we'll get into. So this radioactive plume is up into the atmosphere, and these jets are flying through it, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, you don't think that's going to have an effect on the airframe or the bolts holding the engines in? Now, if you look in the news lately, you'll see planes are losing engines, they're losing landing gear, they're losing other parts, flaps are falling off, doors are falling off. And they always say, oh, the structural failure or something, the integrity of whatever was holding it must have broken free. It's weird. That shouldn't happen. And these are the same planes many cases that are flying through this plume of radiation. Now, I know some people say there's no scientific merit to what you're saying. Well, really? You can go look it up. If you do the research yourself, you'll see. If you expect some jerk off in a lab coat to come and tell you from the government, you're going to be old and you'll probably be a skeleton waiting in line for the answer. Because it ain't never going to happen. You have to do the research yourself. They're not going to tell you it's safe. Or they're going to tell you it's safe, rather. They're not going to tell you it's dangerous. They're going to be like, oh, it's fine. I can't remember the one guy's name right now. Was it Roland Gaither or something like that? I can't remember his name. The idiot that was supposedly eating toxic nuke waste back in the 50s. Like public service videos. Oh, this is fine. You can eat it. I mean, the government's going to tell you everything's okay. Because they don't, for whatever various reasons, they could come up with 16 different excuses. The point is they're lying to you. So you have to do the research yourself. You'll see what's going on. Now that I've done this broadcast and I've even talked about Wigner, and I urge you, by the way, not to just listen to this broadcast and be like, man, I know all about Wigner. No, you don't. I'm giving you like a very, very brief summary of it. If you want to learn in full, you got to go over to RadChick's YouTube channel. It's, I think it's just RadChick. Just go on YouTube and type in RadChick and it should come up in one of the options, or just type in RadChick channel and it should come up. Subscribe to her channel on YouTube. And then if you go on to her playlist section, she's got one that I think it's titled Wigner or Wigner Effect / Loren Murray. And if you click on it, it's all of her videos that she's done with Loren. She did a long interview with her, and she broke it up into segments discussing certain different parts of Wigner in different cases, and she took a lot of time and put video to match the events that they were discussing. She found video, because there's cameras all over the place, right? And everybody has cell phone footage. So she found videos of all these different events and put it in there so you could actually see what was going on while they were discussing this in this interview. So she put a lot of time and energy and effort into these videos. I urge you to go watch them, ladies and gentlemen. Me talking about Wigner tonight is literally just glossing over the subject. Christina's put a ton of energy and love into those videos. Go give her some support and watch them. And not only will you're supporting her work, right? I mean, you're not really supporting it monetarily. You know what I mean? You're supporting it energy and effort-wise, but it's really educating you. And then you can take that information and you can share it with others. And then we can educate everybody as to what's going on. And then we can actually come up with an idea to deal with the problem. See, we can't deal with the problem until we actually know there's a problem. And the mass general public doesn't even know there's a problem. Most people think Fukushima was shut off. Well, didn't they turn that off? Oh, yeah, because they can do that like a light switch when there's a meltdown. They just come over and go, that's how you stop a meltdown. You just flick the light switch. That's how you handle it. No, not at all. So, anyway, as Christina said to me, you won't be able to ignore planes falling out of the sky. Because as more and more planes start to fall out of the sky, or more and more parts start to fall off, more and more people are going to be like, what in the hell is going on? So, yeah, eventually Wigner is going to come to the forefront. People are going to have to pay attention to it. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to reiterate a point here, okay? Because this is really, really important for everybody to understand. They've known about this since the 50s. I'm going to repeat that, okay? They've known about this and the effects of radiation since the 50s. They've known about the effects of radiation on you, on materials, on all sorts of different objects. On the human health, the body, everything. Yeah. They've known since the 50s. You know all those tests where they were lighting off nukes and they had the soldiers standing there and they were all watching it? That wasn't to keep testing the different types of bombs. It was to test the effects on the human body. And those soldiers were guinea pigs. You like that, right? The soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that stood there and they watched those bombs go off, they were guinea pigs, ladies and gentlemen. used by our government. And I'm willing to bet they were denied any type of benefits as well. Even if they were given it to them later on, I'm willing to bet that for most of the time they were denied benefits because they'll never admit any of that. But that's what it was about. You go back, you can even research it. You'll see now that's what they were doing. 60 years later, most of the people that were responsible for that are dead. So you can't prosecute them. You can't go after them, right? It's the way the government works. You always find out about stuff later on. Hoorah. They put them out in the middle of the desert. They lit off nukes in front of them and said, stand here. And don't worry, we'll take care of you because we're your family, right? We love you. We're your superior officers. Sir, yes, sir. Absolutely abhorrent. So yeah, they know since the 50s what it does to the human body and what it does to building materials and everything else. Now, Wigner discovered this, about the effect on like concrete and steel and stuff like that. There's something else that comes out of the Wigner effect. And it's the effect that radiation has on the human brain. There's something else that goes along with planes losing parts or engines or having, catastrophic failures or all this crap suddenly. And again, it's a lot of them are the ones that are going through this radiation plume. But there's something else that's going on. Have you all noticed the high incidence of people losing their minds on planes lately? Like absolutely losing it and going ape shit, and they have to land the plane. They have to fly down and land somewhere else, and they have to, escort the people off with a SWAT team sometimes. I mean, yeah, okay, the SWAT team is a little bit overkill, but you know what I mean. How about the flight crew? They've had stewardesses, or I don't know what they're called. I don't want to offend any of them. Whatever. I don't remember what the word is called for them. Flight attendants. There you go. They've had flight attendants that have lost their minds. They've had captains that have lost their minds. What's going on? Oh, well, radiation has this interesting effect on the human brain. One of the side effects of it is lack of impulse control, bouts of rage. Huh. Isn't that what you see going on these planes? And a lot of them are these intercontinental flights that happen to be flying through highly radioactive areas in the atmosphere. But I'm sure that has nothing to do with it, right? I'm sure that radiation has nothing to do with it, just like radiation has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on the West Coast. And once you start looking at this, you can't unsee it, ladies and gentlemen. So now you have this, and you'll notice after this show, you'll notice, and when you go watch Christina's videos, because I know you will, I know many of you actually do the quote-unquote homework that I set out during the radio broadcast. But when you guys go educate yourselves and you learn about this stuff, you're going to not be able to unsee it. And you're going to start to be like, oh my God. And it's happening everywhere. I can't go in my feed in the morning. Like I have my routine where there's a couple different places I get my news from and stuff. And I can't go on, let's say there's 5 different spots. At least one of them is going to have a story about a plane losing a part, a Ferris wheel breaking and falling down, or in France a couple weeks ago, it was one of those bungee cord things where you get in the round cage and they slingshot you. Yeah, the thing went up, and on the down trip, one of the cables snapped, and then the thing started bouncing off the side pole. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, people can say, well, that's just a cable snapping. But how is metal, especially stuff that you would think is inspected, and I know not all carnival rides are inspected, but those things are usually, the cities own them, so they have a little bit, and it's usually like in Daytona Beach, they have one, and it's right there on the pier. So I would assume that the city has some level of standard of inspection. Maybe they don't, who knows? But the point is, they're metal. What would cause that metal to fatigue like that randomly? And if it happened more often, I would say, well, the crappy clamp or crappy cable or crappy this or crappy that, or the design of the thing, the stress because of the way it bounces and blah, 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 blah. But you don't see those things snapping on the regular. So when something like that starts to happen and you start to see more and more of these rides having issues where it's a bolt breaking, remember, most of these disasters that happen is usually a 50-cent part that takes a plane down or blows something up or destroys something catastrophic. All you need is a pin to go, and a crucial moving part, and it's good night, Sally. Okay, it's over. So that can happen, and that could be where it's the weakest link. So say Wigner is affecting everything, right? Say you got Wigner, the radiation, breaking down on a molecular level, the metal, everything, and that pin happens to be the weakest point. That's the one that's got the most, breakdown molecularly and inside. You might not even see hairline fractures on the outside, but on the inside, it's breaking down, we'll say. And it would be doing it on the outside as well. But we'll say the pin's buried inside something and you don't notice it because the wear and tear on the outside perhaps looks like normal wear and tear to the guy that's inspecting it. But on the inside, that pin is shot. And you put a little bit of shock load on it. You put a little bit of load on it. Maybe it's an airplane part and it's, stress on the airframe, whatever. And snap. And that's it. And then there's a catastrophe. And everybody will blame, it's a broken part. It's weird how it failed. And they could eventually trace it back. They've done it with airplane disasters where, I forget which one it was. There was one where they were servicing the one of the engines. I believe it was a DC-10. And they had, when the plane was taken off, the stress of taking off, the engine busted off while it was taking off. And the reason it busted off was when they were fixing it and they were doing maintenance on it, instead of doing it properly, they had cut a couple corners. And then when they put the engine back on, because everything unbolts off the wing, when they put the engine back on, they tweaked one of the bolts. And they only had to tweak it a little bit and give it just enough of a hairline fracture. And then when the plane was taking off, the stress from that, the stress on the airframe and on that bolt from the motor and the torque of the motor and the wind coming over it and the weight and everything else, it snapped the bolt and the engine ripped right off on takeoff. And as the engine ripped off, it went up over the top of the wing and took off like 6 meters of the leading edge of the wing where the flaps were. And the plane crashed. A bunch of people died. All because of a 50-cent or $1 bolt that was tweaked and broken. Now, that was mechanical error, but can you imagine if that is going to be going on a much larger scale because of the Wigner effect and how it's breaking down the metals? Not good, ladies and gentlemen. Not good at all. And this isn't to scare you. Oh my God, don't go on planes. No, this isn't to scare you. This is to show you that there's a problem. And even the airline industry is paying attention to the Wigner effect. There are airline engineers that are paying attention to this. This is not some conspiracy theory. This is science. This is already scientifically proven fact. Going back to the 50s. Oh, by the way, the 50s is the same period of time that they also knew that plankton bioaccumulates radiation about 1,000 times more than the seawater, the surrounding seawater. So when you want to get, as Christina has said, when you want to absolutely get the lowest level of radiation when you're testing seawater, then sure, test the surrounding seawater. But when you actually want to get an accurate account of what the material and the plant life in there, or the life, I should say, inside of that water, i.e. the plankton, you want to get an idea of what their radiation level is, you should test the effing plankton. Because that'll give you a real number. So when you absolutely want the lowest number possible, government, of course, test the seawater, which is what they do. But they won't test the plankton itself, which they know since the 50s bioaccumulates radiation 1,000 times more than the surrounding seawater does. See how they play the numbers game? It's just like they did with the Iraq War, right? They didn't want you to know how many people died, so there's certain injuries or deaths that weren't counted in the official killed in action list, and they were just put off as other deaths. So they keep the combat deaths low. They keep the numbers low. It's the same thing with this. Same game. All it is distracting you, telling you one set of numbers, not telling you another. Focusing on something that's, it's important to know the level of radiation in the seawater. But isn't it more important to know the levels of radiation in the plankton that everything in the ocean is eating? Oh, I wonder why the sea life is dying. over on the West Coast. I wonder if the levels of radiation in the plankton have something to do with it. It could be. I mean, I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a physicist. I'm just smart enough to do a little bit of research, and I know basic science. I actually know science pretty well, even though I'm self-taught. I don't need a college degree. I can keep up with PhDs. But I digress. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that you yourself, anybody can look at this and understand and know what's going on. All you have to do is take the 5 minutes to start to do the research. And look, this is not something that you can research for 2 or 3 minutes and then run out and start telling people about, oh my God, Fukushima, the Wigner Effect. You have to actually take some time with this stuff. You actually have to listen to interviews, listen to Christina's interviews, listen to her older shows that she did on Nuked Radio. Go listen to interviews that she's done herself where she's being interviewed. Go listen to the shows I've done with her. Go listen to the show I did with her and Loren Murray last month about the melting starfish and all the die-off over on the Pacific coast and everything that's going on over there. Pay attention, ladies and gentlemen. Go educate yourselves. Take the time. Turn off that TV. And most of you that listen to this radio show don't watch the television on a regular basis, so that's already good. But turn that off. Don't even pay attention to some of the distractions you see in the alt media right now. Pay attention to things that are important, like Fukushima. Okay? It's really important to discuss it and go over what's going on, because this is an ongoing thing. This is an ongoing problem. The Wigner Effect. All this. This is stuff that's really going to affect it. Like, what's going to affect you more? Let me ask you, what's going to affect you more? What Miley Cyrus or whatever famous moron is on TV today doing? Is that going to affect you more? What they're doing in their personal life? What color they painted their toenails? Or what color underwear they're wearing? Is that going to affect your life? Or do you think the radioactive material that's being ejected into the sky and all the radioactive water that's being spewed into the Pacific Ocean, do you think maybe that could have a problem? Do you think that maybe that could have more of an effect on your life? I do. I mean, I would say that would actually be more of a danger to your everyday life than, what star put what color toenail polish on, or whatever the hell they focus on in the news. The race-baiting BS, everything else. I told you, Fukushima is the great unifier. It is the great unifier. Nobody would care about color, sexuality, political agendas, because none of that would matter. Nothing. Anyway, we're going to break. Pay attention to what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. Now that you understand Wigner a little better, you'll start to see it more. We'll be back in 3 short minutes. I want to get into what's going on at Fuku when we get back. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of DTRH. I am your host, Popeye, from federaljack.com and popeyeradio.com. And, of course, my YouTube archive channel, DTRH Radio Archives. That's Delta Tango Romeo Hotel Radio Archives. So, we're back with hour number 2. In the first hour, I discussed the Wigner Effect. I discussed the ongoing problems with containing radioactive material. I actually even got into what radioactive waste is. I want to get into Fukushima itself now. I want to focus on some of the issues. And we can talk about Wigner a little bit and some of the stuff that I went over. When I say we, it's because I am joined by a special guest co-host for the second hour, an expert on all things radiation, Wigner, and Fukushima, my good friend, Christina Consolo, a.k.a. RadChick. So let's welcome her to the show. Christina, welcome back to the broadcast, my dear.
Well, there you go, killing it with the intro again. And you did with the information, too, by the way. That was an excellent summary of our current situation.
So I have to give you a big thank you before we get into it, because you and Loren, and I said this in the first hour, you and Loren are the ones that educated me about what's going on with Wigner. And I mean, you are largely responsible for my education about Fukushima in general over the years. But this whole Wigner Effect thing, and since I was just talking about it, I just want to bring this up really quick. You gave me like the Hoffman sunglasses, as I said in the first hour, but like the Wigner version, because now everywhere I look, I see scaffolding falling, plane parts falling off. So I'm going to give you the floor for a few minutes. If you want, you can get as deep as you want. Just elaborate a little bit on Wigner, if you'd like, and explain to people why you feel it's so important.
Well, the way that I got into this was actually following the stories of the pilots that were passing out during flights and having heart attacks and having to have the controls taken over. And sometimes the control tower would have to like walk somebody through landing the plane. That was going on a lot. In fact, it had happened like 3 times in 1 week just with Alaskan Airlines. And so I had done this interview with Alfred Weber. And after going back and looking through like the last 10 years of data about pilots passing out, it had just gone up. It had exploded in the number of cases post-Fukushima compared to pre-Fukushima. And so I had done this interview, and I met a friend of mine for lunch, and it's a childhood friend who's a radiation physicist and works in the nuke industry. And we'd spent a couple hours going over the information that I had done on this broadcast with Alfred. And he like kind of sat there, thinking about all of this. And he said, actually, I'd be a lot more worried about the planes falling apart than the pilots passing out. And the reason for that is there's always a chance that someone else can land the plane if the pilot becomes incapacitated. But when you have a plane that, the wing falls off, or the tail falls off, or the propeller, or the tire, or, all these stories that we've had in the news recently, then, the safety of everybody on board becomes the major concern. And you sent me an article, I think yesterday, about a whole group of people that wigged out on a plane.
Well, that's one of the things I was talking about in the first hour, how it affects impulse control and the way people behave. And ever since you told me about that, pilots are freaking out, flight attendants are freaking out. And then I sent you a link the other day, and it was 5 or 6 people on a plane just went berserko. So explain a little bit how radiation affects the human brain and how it affects behavior.
Well, the radioactive particles that have been released and are, continuing to be released from Fukushima by pouring into the ocean or going up into the air column, for just unchecked for 4.5 years straight, they're very unstable. And what they want to do is bind to something else that's stable. And you have a unique situation with the planes, not only just because they're flying at altitude and they're already getting gamma radiation from the sun and the 85% of the atmospheric testing fallout that's still up there in the higher layers of the tropopause. And we know that's there because when Mir came back from a mission, they tested the filters in Mir, and it actually had particles from fallout that were all over these filters. And so that's how they know the amount that's still up there. So, engineers figure all of this into their specs when they're working on the mechanics of the plane or the maintenance schedules of the plane, but they're not taking this added radiation into account. And, what really needs to happen is maintenance needs to be on lockdown with this. And there's ways that they can test the integrity of the metal and all of the various components. They can use ultrasound, they can actually use X-ray, they can use electrical conductivity tests to check the integrity of the metal. There's all kinds of ways to check it, but with the flight schedules, they barely get people off the plane and the next group on before they take off again. So none of this is really happening, and certainly not at the rate that it needs to be.
Can I ask a question? If they X-ray the plane, won't that exacerbate the whole Wigner effect?
There's all kinds of different ways that radiation, it's not just Wigner. There's, different types of radiation that comes out of the decay of particles. So these are disrupting the molecular structure of the metal itself. And during bomb testing, one of the things they used to do is offer, the government would offer free car washes to the people that lived downwind of a nuke test. And they would Geiger counter the whole car. And then they'd give them their free car wash, and they would power wash it with different substances to test and see, well, how do we get the radiation out of the metal? And what they found is they actually pushed the atomic particles into the metal So they're actually accelerating the entropy, that's from the Wigner Effect even more. They can't decontaminate any of the battleships that they nuked. They can't decontaminate anything that was in the fleet with the Reagan, and the same thing happens in your body. And if you listen to any of the Wigner interviews that I've done with Loren, listen to the segment about from cells to soldiers. And you can just look at what's happened to soldiers who've been affected by DU and how it's affected their health. And as Loren explains in that segment, it's only like 15 minutes long, and I've actually listened to it a couple of times because the explanation is so good. It's like the best explanation I've ever heard of how radiation affects the body. And all of the little switches that you have that are constantly like telling your body what to do, whether they're conscious or unconscious, your breathing, your tear film. I'm sitting here, it's humid where I am, so, I'm sweating. I'm looking at things on the computer while I'm talking. All of these things that are happening are happening because of small chemical reactions that are happening in my body. And there's millions of these that are going on like every second of the day when you don't have interference from things like radiation. And when you breathe in any kind of radiation that's in the air, 70% of what comes in through your lungs gets into your bloodstream. And then it's deposited in different areas. And it tends to be deposited in areas where they have like higher circulation, your brain, your eye, your kidneys. It can affect the heart. I mean, it can affect every part of the body, and those symptoms can change over time. So what happened to soldiers who were exposed to DU on the battlefield is that when they came back and then they were sick, they would be sick from like a multitude of different things, and it would change over time. So it actually made them look crazy.
That would be Gulf War syndrome, correct?
Yes, that is Gulf War syndrome. Watch Beyond Treason.
Good film. Great film, actually. You can download it over at the Reality of War section for free on federaljack.com. Go to the downloadable archive section over there, and you can download it for free. Beyond Treason, Joyce Riley's film. Great film. If you know a vet, if you are a vet and you haven't seen it, go watch it. You'll learn about DU. You'll hear Doug Rocky, who I've interviewed. I mentioned DU earlier. That's depleted uranium, ladies and gentlemen. They've irradiated this country with so much of that crap that honestly, worrying about Iran or some fictional terrorist organization lighting off a nuke in this country is absolutely ridiculous. We've already been irradiated. It's time for everybody to realize that. So, moving on, Christina, I want to get into Fukushima because there's a lot going on over there, and we're going to need probably the rest of the hour to discuss all the crazy stuff that's going on. First, I want to talk about this groundwater issue, and I want to bring this up because we discussed this the last time I had you on with Loren, and we were talking about an issue that most people don't discuss when they discuss the radioactive water going into the Pacific. They assume we're discussing the stuff that TEPCO's pumping out from the cooling ponds and they're getting rid of. I don't think people really understand, unless they've heard that interview, that Fukushima sits on a section of land where there used to be a river. They diverted it, as you told me, and now the rainwater, because of just the pitch of the ground and everything else, when it comes down out of the mountains, it still travels down under the ground. So you have this massive amount of groundwater that passes underneath the plant every day, and the cores, the 3 cores, have melted down into said ground. So you have all this radioactive water that's making its way out to the Pacific. Now it's bubbling up under Fukushima, apparently, or coming up, like the water levels are rising, which, by the way, I'd like to point out that Christina called this 2 years ago and said that this was going to happen and that they should be paying attention to this. I'd just like to point that out. And now you actually have water coming up, and now TEPCO's freaking out, and they're actually going to start pumping groundwater out. Could you get into that a little bit for the listeners?
Yeah, and everything that you've talked about tonight, what's so surreal about this whole situation is if this groundwater problem at Fukushima doesn't get dealt with, they're not going to be able to keep workers on the site. And even though they're not really doing anything because they don't have any technology to fix what's going on underground where the meltdowns are, there's maintenance that is done, like the pouring of the water onto the cores and things like that. They won't be able to have anybody on site to do that. And what I had said 2 years ago on an interview that I did with Bob Tuskin is that, when if this groundwater, and there's been lots of people who have said this stuff will start popping up in different places, and even professors in Japan have said they suspect that this is already happening in the Pacific, in that bay that's right off the plant, that there's corium that has actually, the melted lava from the reactors has actually popped up from the seafloor. If that starts happening around the plant, or any groundwater that's come in contact with those cores, these guys will walk into it and they'll drop dead. And in the last couple of weeks, we've had like 6 people that this has happened to. We've also had a couple of accidents over there. One where two workers that had been working on the ice wall, which is like a failed project that for some reason they thought would be a solution to this situation. Worker backed into the other guy's head with a truck. So he was killed. There were a couple of guys that dropped out of heart attacks. Some that were like DOA, and other ones that were in the hospital for a couple of days and then died. And then I think it was yesterday morning, there was another, the first story that came out is a worker had tried to hang himself around the tank farm. And the tanks are leaking now. We know the tanks are leaking because the numbers all of a sudden are like astronomical over the last couple of days in one spot in the plant. So there's a leak over there from one of those big tanks that they've built. And the story that TEPCO ended up putting on their daily report was that he had got hung up in some kind of like harness. He was like hanging inside of the tank welding something before they were going to put the water in it, and he somehow got hung up in this harness. And I'm not sure if he died or not. I don't recall if I've had an update to that story yet. But, this is just in the last couple of weeks. There's, been like 6 of these, worker incidents where they're not thinking properly, they're having weird accidents, or they're dropping dead. That's a sign that the radiation there is out of control. Like the workers can't deal with what's going on around that site, and that's bad. Because if that site gets evacuated and they can't keep maintaining it, we still have all these pools there that are full of fuel. We still have all the melted blobs underground, and nobody really seems to know what's going on under there, which is just crazy. And all the groundwater, there's like 3 to 5,000 tons per day that moves through the site because of this river. And there's also an ancient fault right underneath the plant. And if you there's an article, it's called The Geology of Fukushima, and I posted it within the last few days because of all these groundwater issues that were going on. There's a fault under the plant, and they didn't have the proper imaging technology at the time the plant was built because it's so old to see that there was an ancient fault there. And it starts from like 200 meters under the plant, and it goes down to like 1,300 meters. I mean, it's visible with the ground penetrating radar. Now, for some reason, they won't show us what ground penetrating radar looks like now under the plant, even though there's like published photos from like 2006 of this giant fault under there. So, why aren't they showing that? We know the U.S. has at least 11 satellites in orbit that can do this, that can, they use them to look for bunkers, they say, and other things. I think they're probably looking for rare minerals and where people might be storing their own things. And, that's kind of where we're at. And if things really get out of control there, you don't want the radiation to get so high that then other plants along the coast have to evacuate too. And that almost happened when the buildings started exploding at the beginning of all this in 2011. There were plants to the north and south that had such high radiation levels from Fukushima, they almost had to evacuate their sites.
This whole thing is really scary. And I don't want people to be afraid of it. I don't want people to view this whole show or any of this information in the vein of fear. I want them to look at this with a set of eyes based off of logic and understand that we have to deal with this because this is just exponentially getting worse. I mean, you would think 4 years on they would have figured something out by now and had to deal with this, but they're not really doing anything. And you brought up the ice wall. What is that doing? How much money was wasted? How much time and manpower? How many people died dealing with that thing? How many people are still dying dealing with this ice wall garbage? It's
Well,
ridiculous.
right after the accident happened, all of the fuel in reactor one they found out was liquefied uranium, and it was like it was some crazy number. It was like 5,000 or 6,000 degrees, and Michio Kaku even like flipped out about it because it's never been seen before in the history of nuclear energy. So they started injecting all this epoxy into the ground to make the ground hard and like build this wall around reactor one where it's next to the sea. And now what that's doing is it's damming up all of the stuff around the site. And that's why it's coming up through the wells and it's coming up through the ground. So they've dug 2 new huge wells. These are going to be extraction wells where they start pulling the groundwater up. And then I guess they're going to be putting it into the tanks, probably the one the guy was working on, that where he had this accident. And, with the tanks are kind of just for show. And when you look at like an aerial view of that site and how many tanks they have and like just the stuff, this place is just expanding and expanding in the waste. That's only just the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the stuff is just going into the ocean. And, for a long time, like people have gone back and forth, is Fukushima an ELE? And I have always said like, no, I don't think it is. There's ways you can mitigate your way out of this. But if something like that happens, I don't know. You have so much contamination that's already showing up and so much sickness in the Pacific. And if you consider how many people use the Pacific Ocean as a food source, it's like, 75% of the world's population eats food from the Pacific. Well, then we're getting into the range of a possible ELA because the cancer and the disease that's going to come out of this is going to be horrific. Like the only people that will benefit from this is the health industrial complex.
Yeah, but one would think that even anyone else is going to be affected. Like there's no safe place to hide from this. Even the Southern Hemisphere. People go, "Oh, you could hide in the Southern Hemisphere." No, not. But if it keeps going, it's going to leak into the Southern Hemisphere eventually. The whole planet will be contaminated. So, do they not care about that?
Oh, they know. They know. Look at the billboards that in your town right now. How many billboards are there for, do you have cancer?
Yeah, everybody should go out on their local highways. Go out for like a Sunday drive, right? You and your significant other go driving around for like 45 minutes and just look at the interstates and look at the billboards and see how many are advertising. Do you have cancer? Do you have this? Do you have that? Go to this hospital. Go to that hospital. Good point.
And look at the infrastructure while you're out and about. Look at the freeway overpasses and see what they look like in your area.
Yeah, you'll start to see what I would consider to be effects of Wigner. And I know, like I said in the first hour and in the first, I guess it was like the first 5 minutes of me talking about it, that yes, there's regular breakdown of materials, but the stuff that you explained to me with the way that Wigner accelerates all that. So in an easy way for people to understand, if like a bridge is built and it's supposed to last 50 years, the bridge is probably only going to last 20 to 25 years, if that. Is that about correct? Like it would accelerate the decay of the metal, or do you think it wouldn't even last 25 years?
Well, from Eugene Wigner's work, yeah, it massively accelerates it. So that would show up in the data, and you can look at this in a number of different ways. Planes are going to be getting it the worst because they're flying through it, and when planes fly through the air, they generate a large amount of static on the airline skin. And so you have all these unstable atomic particles that are in the air that want to attach to something. They're drawn to the static on the plane. So the planes are almost like scavenging the radiation out of the air. And that's why you see them falling apart so fast. Like we expect entropy to occur, and engineers know how long under normal operating conditions things are going to last. So they build things to certain specs, and they get away with what they can because they need to make the planes lighter and all of that. But they're not taking into account this massive amount of additional radiation. They know about the gamma. And by the way, space weather and NASA is now sending up, they have 4 balloons, and it's called like XRAD is the name of the project. They're sending up balloons to check radiation levels in the atmosphere because they're actually really concerned about it. Space weather has been reporting for a couple of months when they've been sending up their balloons that the gamma rays are just off the charts, and they're not testing for, beta or alpha or anything else, but these balloons that they're sending up are. They're going to monitor all of the radiation in the atmosphere. How much of that information we'll see, I don't know.
Yeah, I could take my two here. I'll hold my two fingers up. You see, from my index finger to my thumb there. See that tiny amount of minute space in between? Yeah, that's the amount of. I think that's the amount of information that's going to come out of there. Is there a way for us to publicly get access to that information, or no?
Well, what we're doing and what we've been doing since February of last year is going back and collecting all of the data, not just from plane crashes, but from emergency landings that occur because of equipment failure, and categorizing them and going back in the years prior to Fukushima and the years after. And so far, what we knew already when we did our first, Loren and I did our first Wigner interview, is that the numbers, there was a, huge acceleration of these incidents. And there's a lot of different factors, and we have to look at all of this very rationally and rule out all the things that we can, but we need to know that this is happening and that engineers and mechanics are not taking this into account when they're inspecting the planes. And it's really, metal fatigue is one of the biggest things, but the other thing is anything that's computerized. What have they done over the years? They've made the chips really thin, and there's actually studies that have been done to show how much cesium will break down computer chips. And they know that it breaks down, there's an acceleration of the entropy under those conditions. So anything that's controlled by electronics, hydraulics, the brakes are catching fire. I mean, how many of those have we had? And especially in Florida for some reason, the brakes, the plane just, catching fire as it's taking off. And of course it's full of fuel then. So it's a major thing for them to land the plane and get everybody off the plane. But, just start paying attention to go to airlive.net on Twitter and just look at how many emergency landings there are. And there's a lot of them for medical reasons because people are having heart attacks in planes, and the flight crews too. They're already at a much higher risk for skin cancer and breast cancer and things like that. The added exposure from Fukushima is not being taken into account as far as their health and their mental health.
We got about a minute before break. I know you and Loren have talked about the radiation plume from Fukushima. How high up does this go, and where does it encompass that the planes are flying through it?
It basically mixes in with the tropopause, which is a very highly dynamic region of the atmosphere. That's where all this stuff is. That's where all the rain is generated from. The atomic tests were done higher, so a lot of that is up when the planes fly at altitude, but it's when they're going up and when they're landing, and especially when they're doing it in rain or snow, that they're really getting affected by this. And the higher they fly, like fighter jets, they fly at very high rates of speed and at very high altitudes. They have a lot more static. In fact, you have to ground the windshields when the pilots land so they don't get a shock getting out of the cockpit. That static is just drawing radiation to it when they fly.
Ugh. So planes are like radiation sponges / magnets. Interesting. See? Science, ladies and gentlemen, because science. Stay tuned. 3 short minutes. Christina and I will be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment, tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. If you want to listen to all my radio shows, everything that I have done over the years, any special reports, all of that stuff, you can hear all of that over at PopeyeRadio.com. PopeyeRadio.com. It's all free, high quality. Download everything. Of course, go to my archive section on Truth Frequency. Show Truth Frequency some love and subscribe to the archives over there and show all of my fellow hosts some love. You can download all those stuff in high quality format. So go show the station a little bit of love. I think it ends up being like $2 or $3 a month for the subscription, which is like uber cheap. So go ahead, support Truth Frequency, support all the good work that Chris, Cherie, and all the other hosts here do. And of course, you can check out my YouTube archive, DTRH Radio Archives, over on YouTube, Delta Tango Romeo Hotel Radio Archives. By the way, I think you all should check out Christina's stuff, so I'm going to make her shamelessly plug her stuff. Christina, go ahead and take a few minutes to shamelessly plug your Twitter, your YouTube, Facebook, and anything else you feel important.
My Twitter account is RadChick Forecast, the number 4. And I'm probably more active on that recently just because I've had a lot of like back problems that I'm dealing with and other stuff. So I can only like really jump on Twitter here and there. But, you know, what I've seen just in the last week and a half is like, you know, holy crap. Like it's all really happening. And, you know, out of all of this, like the planes crashing, I mean, all of this crazy stuff, I know this just sounds really far out there, but the science behind it is solid. And if you watch that Wigner interview that I did, everything that we have talked about tonight, everything that Popeye talked about in the first hour, everything is verifiable. And I've written a couple articles about Wigner too, you know, and everything is like hyperlinked. You can go to Climate Viewer News, RadChick. I have a homepage. I have like some good videos up there that, you know, Beyond Treason is up there. All my links to everything. And my YouTube channel is just RadChick, 2 words. I'm not sure what video I have playing on there, but check out the Wigner playlist. And you'll see why we went ahead with this, because it was a big deal for me and Loren to like put this out there because we knew people were going to say, what the heck are you talking about? You know, but when you have access to the kind of research that she does, because she worked in the weapons industry for a number of years before she became a whistleblower, she has all of the data from Rocky Flats. She has all of the data that Wigner did, all of his research, and that's how we put this together, along with, you know, what's been happening on a massive scale at Fukushima with stuff breaking down. You know, they can't filter the water. They have machines there, and basically, you know, the company that built the machines probably has like $1 billion contract for the next 100 years. Because they have to fix the machines every day because they break down because nothing can work in those fields. The only thing that really can is people for a short time if the radiation isn't too high. But yeah, like you said, all those suits, everything they come in contact with, and that's at every nuke plant. That's in any frack site. All those filter socks that they have at frack sites, those are all radioactive and have to be disposed of. And they're sent to 3 different facilities in the United States, and they're burned because they're considered low level. So they burn it, and they send it up into the air. One of them is in Clive, Utah, and what's happening downwind from Clive, Utah right now, women are having miscarriages like crazy. They had a huge plume that hit them. They were the highest Salt Lake City, and that whole area that's west of the Wasatch Range had the higher levels than Fukushima itself at the beginning of the accident. Plus, they burn radioactive waste there. Plus, they make MOX fuel rods. So there's all this other stuff going on in the environment. And when you go to a place like that where there's like multiple factors, you just look at the population. Everybody's overweight because their thyroids are out of whack. Plus, people eat like crap, and you can't support your health if you're not eating healthy food. And anything that you eat that's processed is just complete crap. It does nothing for your body. So you have to like really pay attention to that now. And, you know, the biggest thing like that affected me out of like studying this for the last 4.5 years, that was that all of a sudden, and this was in the mainstream news for like one day and the story disappeared, cancer is now the leading cause of death in children. And it used to be accidents. So, you know, you have people that go out and they're, you know, putting helmets on their kids because they're skateboarding and they don't want them to hit their head and all that. And then they're letting them drink tap water, which could have uranium in it. Because there's been a couple places recently where they found uranium in the tap water. In fact, Libby Halevi did a really good show on that on Nuclear Hot Seat recently that you guys can check out. And I don't know at this point what can be really done about any of this, because the time to deal with this should have been, you know, 50 or 60 years ago when they started building nuke plants everywhere and lied to the public and said that they were to generate electricity. They were to support the military-industrial complex, and that's the truth. And they have nothing that can contain the radioactive substances that they're dealing with. And what's basically happening in nuclear reactors is you have like a supernova going on in there. And it's generating all this plutonium, like 500 pounds per year per reactor. The government gets to keep all that, and they take it to their nuke labs, and then they like put it in barrels and cover it with tarps and leave it on the site. And there's no place to put it. The only underground place we had was WIP. They had a canister explode on them, and actually like possibly a couple hundred canisters underground. So that project is toast. They don't even know what they're going to do to encase that. And they have all the stuff down there now that is vulnerable. And, Carlsbad and, Albuquerque, they've had really high levels. And Arizona is always like, you wouldn't think because they're farther south and they don't get as, a lot of rain that they'd have such high levels, but they do. And it's because of the stuff that's going on in the state itself with, Sandia and Los Alamos. And then once in a while they have a wildfire and it gets close to the barrels and everybody freaks out because if the barrels catch on fire, we'll have something like Rocky Flats. And they had to basically like bulldoze that site because it was so radioactive. I don't know what we're going to do about any of this except protect our own health. And you have to almost live like you already have cancer and treat your health like you're already sick, and your relationships that you have with people and everything are affected by that. When you get kind of a sense of your own mortality and where things are at and how important it is, like you start caring more about other people and how it's going to affect them, especially the ones that you love, the ones in your family.
This stuff is it's a sobering thought to realize what you just said, that perhaps it's too late to stop the damage that's been done. I would say we can mitigate it as best we can. But what do we do about shutting this down? Because, I mean, if we can eventually stop it, at least eventually the proliferation of this stuff into the atmosphere, into the groundwater, into the air, into the ground itself, the earth, it'll stop if we can stop these plants from being built and we can get people to actually start paying attention to that. I mean, that would be the end goal, I think. I don't think we'll be able to, I don't think in my lifetime, your lifetime, my niece's lifetime, or even probably her kids' lifetimes, will they see the planet cleaned up from this mess. But I think that if we can get people to start thinking differently about it and looking at it with a set of logical eyes, not fearful, but with logic and with some tenacity to actually do something about this properly, then we can at least shut it off. I mean, right now, like I described Fukushima earlier as it's 3 faucets that they turned on high and busted the valves off, and it's just pissing radiation out into the planet.
Yeah, what they needed to do really at the beginning is dig a enormous trench around the entire facility to keep the groundwater from coming into that site, since they're already pouring water too. Instead, they build a wall on the site of an old river over an ancient fault that gets hit with a tsunami. I mean, what else could go wrong, right? Oh yeah, the buildings all exploded and the cement fuel pools caught on fire, and just it's so out of hand. And like that one plant, if that one plant goes out of control, like we're in big trouble. And we kind of are already, because our genome's been so affected by everything that we've been exposed to, and our parents were exposed to, and our grandparents were exposed to atomic testing. If you had parents that were in the military and they were in any of these places where they used DU, Chernobyl, 40,000 people died in excess over what was normal the year after Chernobyl happened in the United States from the fallout that blew over here from Russia. And Fukushima is at least 300 Chernobyls.
300 per day or 300 in total?
300 in total, and that might be actually like a low ball estimate. That was because right at the beginning, Christopher Busby had tested air filters in Japan, and based on the particles that were in the air filters, it was 300 times what was in the air after Chernobyl. But then the accident has gone on another 4.5 years, where Chernobyl was kind of like capped and contained somewhat. This accident isn't, and we have 3, melted corium nuclear chain reacting lava underneath the plant. God only knows where, supposedly.
And they don't have the technology to clean this up currently, right?
No.
They admit that they don't.
No, you can put a cement cap over it, basically. But with how much chain reaction is going on down there, who knows if that would even hold it? That could cause like another hydrovolcanic explosion, and then you've got a worse situation than one you have now. And this is just happening at one plant. What if multiple plants went down?
GE, they bring good things to life. Thanks, GE.
GE and Westinghouse and Toshiba and all of these companies that make nuclear reactors also run all the mainstream news sources.
Surprise, surprise. Big surprise there.
Yeah, so you won't hear really about any of this on the news. It'll be very superficial if you do. And you really have to just go through like the news and search out just the stories if you want to follow it from the airplane standpoint or from the health standpoint. But more importantly to everybody is, how is the health of your family? And people like write to me all the time and they're like, I live in San Francisco, should I move? And my first question is like, how are you feeling? How's everybody in your family feeling? Do you eat healthy? Do you drink filtered water? Filtered water is really important. More important than really anything. And boosting your immune system, which means you need to get more sleep and you need to eliminate stress. And everyone has, these little like hidden cancer bombs in their body from all of the stuff that we've been exposed to and all the damage that's been done to our DNA in the past. And then you add Fukushima on top of that. The only way to mitigate that is really to be as healthy as possible, because if you have a healthy immune system, it can take care of the cancer. It'll keep the cancer in check and the other illnesses too. So the immune system is like the number one most important thing to protect. I don't take any supplements. I don't take any of that. I had vitamin C IVs for a while because all of a sudden, like, I have no immune system since 2011. And that was about it. And I didn't have much of an improvement after getting that. But if you notice, all of a sudden, all these celebrities are getting vitamin C IVs. Like, just search it on Twitter. They're posting, like, pictures of themselves sitting in the chair with the IV in. And it's like, why? Why are they doing that all of a sudden? I wonder why. But if you have family that's, like, getting sick a lot, having problems with their lymph nodes, not responding to antibiotics like they have in the past, or having problems with their teeth or their hair or their skin or anything that cause, autoimmune system problems can get out of control too. And the only way to combat that is to boost your immune system. And there's people that still live in really contaminated areas in Chernobyl, but they eat whole foods and they eat stuff that they grow like underground. And they're okay living it because they're eating such a healthy diet. Like, we eat so much processed crap, we don't get any nutrition. And then you add the stress levels and lack of sleep and, all of the stress that people have from, like, the economy and all that is like this huge multiplier effect that just makes things get out of control. And you have to take control of it and make sure that your family's being as healthy as possible. And that's all you can really do.
So, filter your water, eat healthier foods, common sense approach to mitigating the damage from radiation, high levels of vitamin C. Would you recommend people take, maybe not vitamin C tablets or whatever, maybe eat more oranges, get a higher level of vitamin C in their system to help too?
Yeah, there's a lot of foods that you can get vitamin C from, and you can just search like what's the top 10, and also for like potassium is good because that helps block it. You need calcium, and you need all of the basic elements in your diet, and you only get those from whole foods. And the best thing to do is get organic, because you don't want to add chemicals into that, because then you've got like a multiplier effect again, which will make the radiation is bad by itself. The pesticides that are used on the food, those are bad by themselves. But when you add the two together, the force multiplier makes it like hundreds or thousands of times worse for your body. And the cells in your body can't function properly if they're not getting what they need. And it's just, getting right in your head and like enjoying your life too, because we really don't know like how it's something that people can easily verify for themselves. And like you had said when we talked the other day, 15 minutes of research and you could see what's going on here.
Yeah, 15 solid minutes of research, like actually paying attention, going through things and looking things up and reading, watching maybe one or two videos, but reading more important than anything else, and you'd see what's going on. It's right in your face. And Christina, you said something else that I want to touch on really quick, and that would be relationships. You said about 3 minutes ago, it's the relationships you have with people, the relationships you have with your family and stuff. That's a huge, important thing for people to hear and understand and actually try to focus on. If your relationships with your family and your loved ones aren't straight, your energy, your vibrational frequency will be different. And all of this will affect you on a much deeper level. And it'll affect you negatively. Now, I know it sounds new agey, but you all know, I've talked about the love frequency, the fear frequency, and all that. We all know that everything operates on a vibrational frequency. All different frequencies, but everything operates on a vibrational frequency, even us. And when you're better when you're better off in your head in that spiritual world, or when you have a connection between your mind, your spirituality, and love, and when I say spirituality, I mean religion, you know what I mean? I mean being connected to everything that there is. The energy that you emanate is much different. And a large part of that has to do with being connected to the people that you love and the people that are your family, however and whoever your family are. And that's a really important point to focus on. So what are your thoughts on that?
That you are in charge of your experience.
Well said. You are in charge of your experience. And what would you recommend on that level for people if they wanted to,
Don't wait for somebody in the family to get cancer for everybody to start being nice to each other.
Like, stop being, like, everybody needs to put their petty differences aside, right? Because
Right.
Fukushima is the great unifier, is it not?
Right. And when you have that, like, when you realize that, you're being upset about it really isn't going to change the outcome. But you can change, like, how you deal with it. And one of the ways is to make sure that you're right with everything in your life. And the relationships that you have with other people are more important than any of this. Because then it doesn't really matter how long your life is.
Very true. Like I said, we're all going to die one day. Looking at this stuff can be really scary, but we're all going to die one day. None of us make it out of this game called life alive. It's the one certainty of things. What do they say? That the two certainties in life are death and taxes, right? So, and taxes, well, that's not always a certainty, but death, yes, that's one thing that you can't escape. So if you're afraid of dying and you live your life, oh my God, I could die. I don't want to think about radiation because it's scary because it could kill me. Well, whether or not you think about it or not, or you acknowledge it, it's still there. It's like gravity. You could choose not to believe in gravity and ignore it. You go to the nearest high object and take a leap off and tell me what happens. It affects you whether or not you want to focus on it or believe in it or not. And that's the way Fukushima is. And I think if everybody just looks at this whole situation logically and calms down, it's not how you die, it's how you live, as I always say. Okay? And that's what they need to do with this whole Fukushima situation. Everybody needs to sit back, and as I've said to you, and I know you agree with this, everybody needs to sit back and calm down and not look at this through that fear frequency, through the lens of, oh my God, this is too much. Because that's, I think, what really happens a lot of times with Fukushima. I think that this subject matter is just so damn scary that people don't want to talk about it. Even a lot of the people in the alternative media, I think they don't want to be called fear mongers, whatever. I think it's that fear If we can get past that fear of death, if we can let go of that, because it's all BS, you can truly live, and then we can affect change. Again, we may not see this planet cleaned up, but I'll be damned if I'm going to leave a crappy, radioactive, glowing planet for the future generations. I want to do something about it. And I expect all of you would want to do something about it if you actually had the full understanding of what's going on. That's why it's important that I do these shows and I talk to you very straightforward with you in a calm manner, so I don't want to freak you guys out. But we have to be honest about this. We have to have these conversations. Thoughts, Christina?
Yeah, sometimes you have to have a sense of humor about the whole thing too. I mean, you really do to get through it. And I've taken more long walks than I ever have lately, thinking about, I knew this was going to happen with the groundwater eventually. I knew this was going to happen and it was going to be a huge problem. It was just a matter of when. And now if they don't, sucking the water out of the ground might cause the integrity of the buildings to shift, because the buildings were already sinking because the place is such a swamp. So I'm thinking about that and the pools and how they're going to deal with that problem. And if they can't solve it with the groundwater, then they'll just have to cover the whole thing in cement. I mean, spray cement, build a sarcophagus, the new one that's going over the old one at Chernobyl. And it'll have to be maintained, though, for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Because that's how long it's going to take all this stuff to decay. Billions of years, basically, for some of them.
We've really destroyed, you want to talk about polluting this planet and pissing in your own backyard. It's absolutely abhorrent what we've done. It really is.
It is. It is. And I only pay really attention to this too because, I have 4 daughters, and I want them to have healthy, happy lives. So a lot of the stuff I tell them is on a need-to-know basis, and they know Mom knows enough that they shouldn't really question it. If Mom says you need to, buy reverse osmosis water, then they're going to buy reverse osmosis water. They just little things like that, especially when you're made up of so much water. And getting enough sleep, that's everybody needs to do that. I mean, these are easy things. This is all really easy and very manageable if you know that it's happening and you know what to do. As far as what we do about the bigger problem, I don't know. If we really can't do anything at this point except if there's new technology that's created to deal with it.
Well, see, I think that there's hope in that right there. And that would entail people actually paying attention to the problem. And as I said in the first hour, if we weren't focusing on bullets and bombs that could chase people around corners and blow things up and new ways to kill people, maybe we could focus that energy on solving these problems like Fukushima and what to do with all this radioactive waste, and maybe creating a rocket that won't explode, lifting off the ground so we could eject it out into the sun. Maybe use railgun technology, big canisters, and just hurl them out into the sun. Maybe that would work. I mean, there's a litany of things we could sit down and actually try to come up with, but it would take people actually focusing on that. And instead of focusing on, like I said, building more equipment to kill, maim, and destroy each other and this planet. We have about a minute and a half left, Christina. Final thoughts on all this?
Check out the Wigner interview that I did with Lauren, because I think people have responded really well to that, and also the Pacific interview that we did where she talked about her experience at the Hiroshima Museum. And when you hear someone that was actually in the industry that makes bombs go through a museum that's showing what the bomb did, it was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. That interview, and that was a month and a half ago. And Larry Batiste, who was in the Wigner interview, he was in that too. And we're focusing mostly on the Pacific and the plane stuff. And you can just approach it from whatever interests you if you want to learn more about it. But really, what we need to do is come up with solutions. And you can't be any good to anyone if you're not in a good place yourself. So you got to take care of yourself first and the people that you care about.
Well said, my dear. Well said. Thank you for coming on last minute. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that you're covering this.
This is important. Everybody needs to know this. Ladies and gentlemen, you can follow Christina over at Twitter, RadChick. the number 4 cast, RadChick, the number 4 cast. Go check her workout. Check her out, RadChick over on YouTube. And as I always tell you, the solutions to our problems, including the solutions to all this insanity, is an inside job. We need to start taking care of ourselves and stop depending on people like TEPCO and douchebags in government. I love you all, and I'll catch you all again live next week. I am out of here.